The second type of waste that we talked about one type of waste, which is waiting. And in case of an organization, it was mainly the environment and build and all of this, right? Second type of waste is defects. And defects causes rework. Defects also cause downtimes, and that's where you will have a lot of firefighting and a lot of rework for everyone to do, and it will waste a lot of time for a lot of people, right? So that's what happens when you have defects. And how do you avoid that is either using test-driven developments. So it is cheaper to fix the defects at the source. That's the cheapest. And for that, you should start talking about test-driven development and continuous integration. Now, about test-driven development, I'm not going to go in depth there because that's what Agile talks about. So if you are aware of Agile, it already talks about some of those aspects like BDD and TDD and pair programming and so on and so forth, right? Writing unit cases, doing, right at the development, you should be incorporating the testing and so on. Second is continuous integration, and again, continuous integration, Agile talks about it a bit. So you start building in smaller batches. You do the continuous build. That's the prerequisite for continuous integration. Automated testing is another important aspect of it, right? So one is the test-driven development, which is at the source, which is the developers and the QA does at the source while writing the code. And then you have all other type of testing like unit tests. You may have even unit test goes as part of that. Acceptance test, non-functional requirements, the scale test, load test, compliance test. So everything as much as you can should be automated, including the functional and non-functional aspects. So when you write your code, you should also be thinking about the scale, and that's where developers' role in the DevOps is important, because you think about this non-functional requirement like scalability, reliability, making sure that you have knobs to turn when things go wrong. And the continuous integration offers you immediate feedback. So the second principle of DevOps, first is systems thinking, second is the amplifying feedback loop. Now what do you mean by amplifying feedback loop? This is what we are talking about. So it is important to have an immediate feedback to the work that you have done, right? Unless you have that, you won't be sensitized. So if somebody comes and tells you that, hey, you've written a code 4 months ago and it has broken, I mean, you might have forgotten completely, right? So it's important to get that immediate feedback, and that's what continuous integration does for you. And most of you would be aware of it, so I'm not going to go too detailed into continuous integration. And you have tools like Jenkins and GoCD and CircleCI and Bamboo to do that, right? And this is what happens. So without automated testing, if you use continuous integration, you just end up with, it's the fastest way to get a big pile of work that never compiles or works correctly, right? So that's where testing is important. And the right way of doing testing is on the right side, not the left side. So it's expensive to detect the problems later on, because automated tests, unit tests are faster. Integration tests take like few hours, and then you have rest of the test, and then you have production, right? So you should try to cover as much as you can in the unit test itself. And when you detect problems here, you should make sure you write a unit test for it, and you keep on iterating over it that way, right? And you can use tools like SonarQube to detect and scan your application. And make sure that it automatically finds the coverage as well as the issues that in advance, right? And that's the inverted test pyramid that a lot of you may already know about. Now, continuous delivery is an extension to continuous integration, where you have all the builds running green. So what that means is you don't deliver continuously, you don't release continuously, you don't deploy continuously, that's fine, but you're ready to do that with a click of a button, right? So your builds are green, each of the feature is well tested, and it's the business decision typically to deploy, right? And a lot of organizations follow this basically. There are only few companies like Google and Netflix and Amazon who do continuous deployment as well, but most companies implement or try to implement at least continuous delivery, and then continuous deployment as an action to it, where instead of doing the manual deployment, you go and deploy it to production directly. That's the idea of continuous. So you have continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment. Now, continuous deployment, there's one more catch. Continuous deployment does not mean you're releasing continuously. There are a lot of different methods of releasing, right? You can do blue-green. Even if your code is in production, it may not be inactive. Deploying is putting it in production. And that's where you reduce the risk by deploying frequently. So when I did this session in Singapore, there was a question like, we don't deploy, like 100 times a day. We don't deploy. You showed me, okay, so that Amazon does this, or Google does this, or Facebook does this, right? So how is it relevant to me? So this is where it gets relevant, because even if you're not releasing the product every day, every week, every 2 weeks, you may go and deploy it, keep it ready, so that you reduce the drama when the release happens. So you have least amount of risk when that happens. You can just toggle a feature. And a lot of times you have feature toggles, right? So feature toggles is you just go and toggle a feature. It's already there, lying around there for a couple of months or for a month already. Or you do A/B testing, where you test the code on a subset of your customers, get the feedback, and then based on that you decide which one to release. You can also have contingency switches, like something goes wrong, you switch and then it will automatically do that, right? So what that means is continuous deployment as well is not about continuous release. Releases can be differently managed, or you can have a different strategy around that, right?